Afternoon and welcome to this webinar on the blue economy in the green transition, European contributions to sustainable management. This event has been organised by the mission of Norway to the European Union and the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union. I'm Brian Maguire, I'll be with you for this afternoon session. We can follow the discussion at #EADebates. Please tweet your comments there, our social media team will respond. And to ask questions, go to the chat section and use the ask button, and we'll bring those questions to the panelists a little bit later on. Now today we'll discuss Europe's policies for a sustainable blue economy and how these initiatives contribute to the global efforts for sustainable ocean management. In May, the European Commission presented the initiative A New Approach for a Sustainable Blue Economy in the EU, and the Commission said not only should the blue economy adhere, like every other sector, to the European Green Deal, it is also indispensable to meet the EU's environmental and climate objectives. After all, it said, the ocean is the main climate regulator we have. It offers clean energy and sustains us with oxygen, food and many critical resources. There just can't be green without blue. A sustainable blue economy has been a priority for the Portuguese EU presidency, and Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg leads the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, where the Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa is also a member. Now, before we meet our panel, we have a short video for you.
As two Atlantic coastal nations in Europe, Portugal and Norway share a strong engagement for the ocean.
The ocean is central in the history, culture and economy of both countries.
The world needs more resources and services from the ocean. A sustainable ocean economy is vital for achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
And Portugal is a medium-sized country. In extreme contrast, our sea is huge. Our economic exclusive zone exceeds 18 times our emerged territory. And we have that in common with Norway. Naturally, we joined engaged in the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy with 12 other countries, politically endorsing a set of ocean priorities built upon knowledge and science. The panel has a very clear takeaway. We need a new relationship with the ocean, one relationship that looks at the ocean as a critical part of the solution for environmental recovery and a sustainable economy. This was the priority of the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union, promoting Council conclusions on integrated maritime policy dedicated precisely to a sustainable blue economy.
Through the EEA grants, Portugal and Norway jointly contribute to the European Green Shift, involving public institutions, academia, civil society and private sector. Achieving the blue in the green requires concrete action.
We are working closely in the EEA grants and its Blue Growth program, comprising over 40 million euros to invest in projects.
Supported by the EEA grants, Portugal has purchased and upgraded the ocean research vessel Mario Rover. The Atlantic Observatory will be organized as a joint research unit promoting the network of marine authorities and relevant research institutions with the strong involvement of the continent's research communities.
The Atlantic Observatory project that we are jointly developing to better understand the ocean. Academia and research institutions from both countries are taking steps for the advance of marine knowledge as proposed in the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development.
The BION project aims to create green hydrogen from offshore wind energy. Fishing the Plastic is a project addressing the problems of plastic pollution by involving the fishing community through the collection and upcycling of plastic in the ocean and on the beaches. Together, we must take better care of the ocean so that we can continue to benefit from it for future generations.
The ocean brings us together and is a lifeline for our future. That is our statement in the panel, in the Portuguese presidency, in our partnership with Norway, and in our continued engagement with the ocean.
Very nicely produced video there, good background to what we're going to discuss this afternoon. Now let me introduce our panellists for today. We have with us Ricardo Serrao Santos. He's the Minister of Maritime Affairs of Portugal, also a former MEP. Good to see you again. Jens Frolic Holt, he's the State Secretary of the Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Norwegian Prime Minister's representative to the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy. We also have with us Hugo Maria Scherli, Head of Unit for Multilateral Environmental Cooperation, DG Environment, the European Commission. Isabel Carvalhas, Member of the European Parliament and Member of the PESH Committee in the Parliament also. And Kristin Therrien, Project Coordinator for the Blue Bio Co-Fund, part of the Research Council of Norway. Great to have you all with us today. Now, if I can ask each of you just to begin with your introductory remarks as well. Ricardo, can we have you go first? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. I hope that the sound is good. Thank you very much, Brian. And let me greet also Jens Holt, Hugo Scherli, my dear Isabel Carvalhais, and Kristin Therrien. And of course, I would also to greet the mission of Norway to the European Union for promoting such an important debate, and everyone that is hearing us in this webinar. We began this session with a movie that in fact acknowledged the important relationship between Norway and Portugal. And since we are still in the context of the Portuguese presidents, let me also underline the strong relationship between Norway and the European Union. The title of this webinar, the Blue Economy in the Green Transition, is aptly fitted with our motto for the presidency. We have elected June as the month of the sea under the general umbrella, a blue agenda in the Green Deal. And this blue agenda is very much dependent on a sustainable economy. In line with the European Commission initiative, a new approach for a sustainable economy in the European Union, Portugal has promoted the approval of the Council conclusions on integrated maritime policy dedicated precisely to a sustainable economy. Those conclusions, debated at a ministerial meeting and a high-level conference on the 8th of June in Lisbon, are grounded in 4 pillars: health, knowledge, prosperity, and social equality that are interlinked with the priority axes of the Portuguese presidency for the sea. And these are sustainable fisheries and conservation of marine resources and integrated maritime policy. The blue economy is critical, not only for the Green Deal, but also to advance the European Recovery Plan, and at a wider scale, the blue economy is critical to achieve our commitment with the sustainable ocean management. This is a goal that we share, Portugal and Norway, and the stated goal of the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy to which both countries belong. The ocean is our primary climate regulator, but it's also key for food security, for numerous critical resources, and for the livelihood of several communities. It entails many of the solutions of our planet, but it is also more fragile than we were used to think. And this is a message that can never be overemphasized. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
I don't know if the sound was okay, but I'm in a different place today. Thank you.
I'm guessing it's a fish restaurant.
Yes, it is. I mean, in the center of Portugal, close to the Rio Guadiana, where I came for a set of meetings with local authorities. And sorry.
No problem. You're living the brand today. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Jens Holt, over to you. Your introductory remarks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, and also a big thank you and congratulations to Ricardo for having had a great lunch, I hope, and also for completing a presidency in a very demanding period. We've had a pandemic, but despite these challenges, your presidency has been a big success, and also you have been able to highlight the importance of the blue economy, as evidenced by the video and also by Portugal's messaging during your presidency. Norway and Portugal has very close bilateral relations, and especially related to oceans. We work together to JPI Oceans, as Ricardo knows well. We are also we were the two European members of the high-level panel on a sustainable ocean economy. This panel was set up in part by Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg to highlight the need for a more sustainable ocean economy and to show how it's possible to protect and produce from the ocean at the same time. And Norway and Portugal are champions of the panel, and we are also now very happy to have France as a member, so we have more European countries on board. I think for Norway, being a true ocean nation, we have Norwegians, we have salt water running in our veins. We have always looked over the oceans for inspiration, for employment, for economic engagement, and we have done so since the Viking Age and before that, and we're also doing it for the future. We see the transition from. We have an economy has grown based on oil and gas exploration, and we are moving into a greener economy based on more renewable resources. And in that regard, the ocean will be the place where we look for economic opportunities. And of course, Norway, being a member of the European Economic Area, places a very strong emphasis on cooperating with the EU. And we are quite enthusiastic, and we strongly welcome the European Commission's recent communications on a new approach to a sustainable blue economy. This mirrors very well what the high-level panel on the sustainable ocean economy has called for as well. We need to show and underline how protection and production walks hand in hand. And the numbers are clear. The Ocean Panel expert groups has calculated that if we invest $1 in the ocean economy, we'll get $5 back. It's possible to increase the food we get from the ocean by 6 times if we manage the oceans better and smarter and more sustainable. So, the holistic approach that the European Commission has set out really matches very well with the holistic approach that the Ocean Panel champions. And the Ocean Panel has a very clear goal of getting to 100% sustainable management of the ocean area, which is a big goal and a big target, but working together with countries like Portugal and also with France, an EU member, makes it possible to get there globally. There are a number of areas where the Norwegian economy and the European economy fits perfectly together, and the Norwegian blue economy and the European blue economy makes for natural partners. Offshore wind power is set to grow with costs falling and output and energy demand increasing. We want to replace the dirty fossil fuel. Norway, as an oil-producing country, wants to reduce demand for fossil fuels and build more offshore wind power. We recently put out a white paper on how we are going to open up for more offshore wind, and we recently also opened an electric link interconnector between Norway and Germany. So we are really looking to EU to cooperate on the energy space. Green shipping is also an area where Norway and the EU shares a common interest, and we are working to join forces with the European Union on both the COP26 coming up in Glasgow and the UN Food Systems Summit, and on COP15, which is the biological diversity COP. So, there's a lot of opportunities, and I look forward to discussing this later in the panel. Thanks.
Jens, thank you. Let's hear from Hugo now. Hugo Shelley.
Thank you, Brian.
There we go.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. Obviously, from the perspective of the Commission, there is an element to the further development of the blue economy that is closely linked to the implementation of the European Green Deal and the different elements thereunder, which bring together the components of the transition to a circular economy, the adoption of a biodiversity strategy in the perspective of 2030, and all that together with the need to ensure such a transition globally. Globally, because I think it's easy to understand in the context of a discussion on a blue economy, because the ocean knows no limits, and whatever is done to the ocean or is put in the ocean will find its ways to many shores and many rivers across the world. Therefore, from a very early time, the issue of marine litter has been recognized by the European Union as a very important issue to be addressed, and we have been in the forefront together with Norway in many instances in ensuring that this is an issue that should be dealt with at global level. In the context of the initiatives of the European Union, the issue of plastic has come to the forefront already with the adoption of the first Circular Economy Action Plan in December 2015. The follow-up to this was, among other things, the adoption of the EU plastic strategy that laid out in broad terms how in the European Union we were proposing to deal with the negative environmental externalities of plastic, and at the same time ensuring the transition to a sustainable plastic economy. One of the tangible results of that effort, which in our assessment will contribute very much to minimize the EU contribution to the problem of marine litter, was the adoption and the subsequent implementation of the directive on single-use plastics. This directive will finally enter into force in all member states in July of this year, and will once fully implemented, make a tangible contribution to global efforts to fight marine plastic litter. But that obviously was not enough, and we need to continue to look for opportunities to step up the fight against marine plastic litter. It has been on the agenda of the United Nations Environment Assembly since very early on, and from a very early stage of the discussion, global partners agreed that business as usual was not an option, and that additional measures should be taken to address that problem. However, it has taken many years to move forward and look at what could be done at the global level in terms of a public policy intervention at global level to address the problem of plastic pollution. And the European Union and Norway have been cooperating very closely in international fora to see that this discussion moves forward. Moving forward meant at an initial stage to analyze, identify, and list global response options through the work of the ad hoc expert group on marine plastic litter that was established by the United Nations Environment Assembly at its third session in 2017. Already at the fourth session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, there were attempts to move forward with the discussion, conclude the work of the ad hoc expert group, and to see whether a decisive step towards the negotiation of an international agreement on plastics that would deal with the environmental externalities of the production, consumption, and use of plastics could be started. That was not possible at the fourth session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, which is why several countries have put their heads together, and luckily both Norway and the member states of the European Union and the European Commission have been in that group to see whether further progress can be made, because the clear analysis that we have all made is that we have big gaps in international governance that address those things. Now, we are at the stage where we hope, and I will come to a close, Brian, don't worry, that in the resumed session of the fifth meeting of the United Nations Environment Assembly, which we hope will be held in March 2022 in Nairobi, and I hope that we all come together in person again, we will take a decisive step forward and launch the negotiation for such an international agreement that would be the necessary complement to all the efforts that are undertaken at the national and regional level. Thank you very much.
Hugo, thank you so much. That was really clear and thorough as well. So I think our audience have heard enough to be able to send in some questions at this point as well. So you don't have to wait till later on. If you want to ask any of our panelists any particular questions, you can address them to them specifically, and let us know where you're from also, if you don't mind, and we'll put those questions to the panel a little bit later on. Now, Isabel Carvalhos, over to you.
Hi there. Thank you. Thank you so much, and good afternoon to all speakers and participants in this very interesting event. I would like to begin by thanking the mission of Norway to the European Union for this kind invitation to participate in the webinar, and gives me the opportunity, obviously, to present my vision on the European contribution to the sustainable blue economy and the ocean, to the ocean management. Allow also that I send a special greeting to my dear friend Ricardo Serrão Santos. Your work, Ricardo, precedes you not only as Minister of the Sea in Portugal, but also for your many years of research and political work on behalf of sustainable models of blue economy. The European Commission was still talking about blue growth, and Ricardo was already arguing on why we should be talking about sustainable blue economy. Now, the communication of the European Commission on a new approach to a sustainable blue economy in the EU, presented a month ago, is a very important step towards the fulfillment of the Green Deal objectives. More than 1 year after discussing the different strategies and plans, this communication now includes already some of the positions and demands that the European Parliament was expressing and has expressed as being fundamental. In the Committee of Fisheries, where I am as an effective member, we have been pressing hard for the inclusion and recognition of the role of fisheries and aquaculture in the transition to a sustainable blue economy. I am much pleased to see the creation of the Blue Forum to coordinate the dialogue between all users of the sea, including fishers and aquaculture producers. I've been defending on many occasions the need to strive for solutions that involve all stakeholders. When we're talking about the sea where there is no private property, managing conflicts and most of all avoiding conflicts is absolutely crucial, as we know. So everybody has to be involved. And a sustainable blue economy includes the sustainable and balanced development of emerging and very important activities, such as blue biotechnology, ocean-based energy production, or tourism. But it must also ensure the continuity and sustainability of more traditional activities, such as maritime transport, fisheries, and of course, aquaculture. Blue sustainability implies also the transition to responsible food production systems, including the capacity to address their impact on the environment. Fisheries and aquaculture are fundamental for Europe, providing healthy foods with highly nutritional value and with low carbon footprint. It is necessary, however, to make sure that when we do, we don't damage this equation, that we don't damage the balance, which is very delicate. And we must recognize that we still need to do a lot to lower the impact of fisheries and aquaculture production in the environment. One word also on the importance of the blue economy in the outermost regions of the Union. These regions depend deeply on the sea, as we know. And the potential and the need for the development of a sustainable blue economy in the outermost regions are high and urgent. So it's also a topic that I think could be useful for our reflection today. This and also the need for a balance. When we talk about, for instance, aquaculture, we know this can decrease the pressure upon the oceans. But at the same time, if we're not careful enough, this can also be damaging for the environment. So it's this very fragile balance that we must look for at all times. And I hope these very brief words, because these are just introductory remarks, may provide an overall idea about what I stand for on this matter. And I'm quite positive that the discussion and the questions will also allow us to address many other relevant issues and will help to go deeper, at least in some of the points that we have already presented. Thank you so much. Back to you.
Thank you, Isabel. And let's go to Kristin Therrien now as well. Kristin, good to have you with us.
Yes, thank you. And good afternoon to all. First of all, I would like to thank the Portuguese presidency and also the Norwegian mission to the European Commission, to the European Union, for organizing this seminar. I know and appreciate that the two countries has a long history of working together to promote ocean challenges and ocean opportunities. It is a pleasure for me to be invited here as coordinator of the Erenet Co-Fund on Blue Bioeconomy, or Blue Bio, to share some thoughts and experiences on how the Blue Bioeconomy can adapt to and contribute to the green transition. Blue Bio is a transnational partnership of 30 funding agencies and ministries across 16 European countries, supported financially by the European Commission. And the overarching goal is to identify new and improve existing ways of bringing seafood and other valuable aquatic bio-based products and services to the market. This implies improvements of traditional fisheries and aquaculture, but also to explore new and underutilized aquatic bioresources, as well as finding new ways of using the traditional aquatic bioresources. To unlock this potential, Blue Bio apply a value chain concept or approach. Our main activity is to establish a funding scheme and thereby to launch calls for proposals, fund and follow up research and innovation projects. To scope our calls and other activities, we address research and innovation challenges, gaps and needs all the way from the exploration and exploitation of the biomass through the production processes towards the products and the markets. This is to ensure progress towards full sustainability and to accelerate the bioeconomy. In fact, at least in some ways, the blue bioeconomy already represents a contribution to a green transition, exemplified by a lower carbon footprint from products produced in sea similar to products produced on lands, such as seafood versus meat. But there are also always rooms for improvements. Efforts to increase the use of low trophic species is one, and increased circularity is another. Circularity is about reducing waste, but also about using waste from harvest and production processes as a resource, within or between value chains. Furthermore, I would also like to point to the large potential for greening that lies within the aquaculture industry, an area where Europe is currently lagging behind, and Norway being one exemption. Aquaculture provides an opportunity to accelerate the production of high-value products and value creation and contribution to the greening. Impacts on the environment need to be assessed and tackled, of course, but they are not only negative. Certain types of aquaculture may even have positive impacts on the environment. Production of algae is one example, contributing to carbon capture. Finally, to untap the full potential of all our efforts, I will stress the importance of an engaged and respectful communication and cooperation on challenges and solutions between academia, industry, and governmental authorities, representing the triple helix innovation model. Today, often expanded to include the civil society in a quadruple helix model. So this would be my final statements on how the European blue bioeconomy can contribute to the green transition. There are lots of opportunities if we work together toward the joint goals. Thank you.
Kristin, thank you so much. We're already getting some questions in, and our audience can keep sending those in. We'll come to them in just a moment. Ricardo, just to give us a bit more detail on the Council conclusions on the integrated maritime policy. For you, what are the headline takeaways from that?
Thank you very much, Brian. I'm sorry for this sounding, but I cannot go outside. It's 37 degrees Celsius outside, so.
Please don't boast of it. Now we're in Brussels today and the weather's terrible.
No, it's very sunny today. Okay, thank you very much, Brian. Yes, the council conclusions on the integrated maritime policy, and I must say that this integrated maritime policy was announced in 2007, so it's already 14 years that gone, and we really wanted to revise it on the terms of the new agendas and the new regulations and the new approach that came and dedicate to the sustainable blue economy. And so these are grounded on 4 pillars, as I said, and for that we need a good governance. The health pillar stresses, among others, the need to address marine pollution, combat illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing, and protect the marine environment. Then we have the knowledge pillar. It's critical to support, of course, sound political decisions. Without knowledge, without solid science, we cannot proceed. In a high-level conference that took place in the beginning of June in the Azores, the All-Atlantic Conference, Norway was also involved, we intensified cooperation in research and innovation in the Atlantic Ocean, just continuing the work of the Galway and blend statements. And linked to the knowledge pillar, I have confidence really in an effective plan to implement the Horizon Europe missions, namely the Horizon Europe candidate mission called the Starfish mission, the mission on healthy ocean seas in inland waters. and the European Partnership for a Climate Neutral, Sustainable and Productive Blue Economy. Likewise, we need to deepen or compromise with advancing scientific knowledge of the ocean with the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And this make all the difference. The decade on ocean science is for sustainable development, and it was also launched during in the beginning of this month of June. Now, in more than ever, we are very much aware of the effects of infodemics and the importance of knowledge to support decision making. Then it comes the prosperity pillar is also vital in our current day and age. We stand, in fact, before the enormous challenge of facing climate emergency, of recovering environment and recovering from the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. We must do it by decoupling from an unsustainable use of resources. In this connection, the Council conclusion highlights farm to fork strategy, which calls for an accelerated shift towards sustainable fish and seafood production and the circular blue economy. Areas of much sustainable investment are smart mobility, and coming to the last is the social equity pillar, which recognizes the decent work conditions for all, including for fish communities, is much needed as the power of women in maritime activities. And I stop here to not go to leave also the floor for others to.
Okay, thank you, Hugo. Thanks so much, Ricardo. Hugo, the role of the European Union and Portugal as well at the international level in ocean affairs. Our objective in Europe is not just to do things here in Europe. We need to have a global impact. It's the same as for data strategy, the same for industrial policies which are developing. And the same is true for the blue economy too. So, at an international level, what does Europe hope to achieve, Hugo?
Thank you, Brian. I think that I can only sort of follow on from what Minister Santos has just shared. It's a central recognition in the context of the European Green Deal that we can only achieve so much by putting the European house in order. We actually have to secure buy-in and partnership with third countries so that we actually go towards solving some of those challenges together. And I think global leadership comes with global responsibilities, and that in the sense of using all available instruments at our disposal to bring partners along in the context of achieving progress in the context of international oceans governance, by achieving progress on the negotiations of an implementing agreement to the UNCLOS Convention on Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction, by actually moving towards an ambitious global biodiversity framework in this context of the CBD COP15, and I think I come back to what I spoke to earlier, by negotiating and concluding a global agreement on plastic pollution in the context of UNEP, by including relevant such provisions in our trade policy instruments. So I think a range of avenues for us to go on, very much in cooperation with partners, to make sure that we change the international system in that regard, and to come to something which I think we talk about a lot, a economic and social development that respects planetary boundaries, that brings the humanity into a safe operating space where we respect the limits that nature has given us, but allows us also to guarantee prosperity and well-being for citizens in Europe and worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. Jens, the Ocean Panel and the EU's Green Deal, how do they mutually benefit each other? And just in the context of what Hugo was saying as well, our trade instruments, for example, they have a multiplication effect and they have far-reaching capacity as well. But from the Ocean Panel and the EU's Green Deal, where do you see the synergies here? Jens?
Well, I think what we try to do with the Ocean Panel is a bit of the let's say, rhetorical, but it's not only rhetoric, but it's the same approach to economic growth that we see, and we acknowledge that you need economic growth and you need to create jobs for people, and the way to do so is to manage your environment and your resources in a sustainable way. So I think and then you back it up with a lot of data and results and concrete policy actions. So I think in the idea behind the European Green Deal and the Ocean Panel is quite similar. But what we are trying to do, and I wouldn't say struggle to do, but what's important is to try to emphasize the link between the ocean and the climate, and the ocean as a climate solution. I talked about offshore wind, but if you look at food as well, if we're going to eat more sustainably, we need to eat more fish, and there's going to be more people on this planet, and all people need to have a healthy diet, which includes fish. And if you are not able to manage this sustainably, if you will deplete stocks, and you'll end up having food systems that are ravaging our planet. So I think if you...
Let me ask Isabel about this as well. Isabel, the European Commission's communication addresses responsible food systems as well. In terms of aquaculture, how do you see the future of this contribution developing? What does a responsible food system look like? It's not just about overfishing, is it?
Yeah, first of all, we do have to recognize that the EU is not self-sufficient in its need for seafood. And as I was saying, aquaculture plays an important role. We still have a potential for growth in aquaculture in Europe. And in fact, when we look at the statistical data, we see that there's been a sort of a stagnation in our production over the last years, for some years now. In any case, and regardless of the need to invest more on aquaculture production, any such increase will need to be aligned with the sustainability of this production. As I said in my opening remarks, we cannot reduce the pressure on wild resources and then cause considerable environment impacts with intensive production. So we need really to think carefully about this. And I think, for instance, the investment in multi-trophic production methods in a circular and extensive production regime should be developed and encouraged. There are two fundamental problems, basically, in aquaculture that I also think we should address. First, the bureaucracy associated with the creation of a new production. I still hear over and over again investors and producers complaining about the time that the whole process takes. I'm sure it's a bit different from member state to member state, but in general terms, they all complain. And for this, the member states have made some efforts, as we know, but there is still a lot to improve. On the other hand, there has to be a change of mindsets about the aquaculture products. Because consumers still have some doubts about safety and about the taste of these products. And this all needs to be demystified, because the EU has simply one of the most comprehensive and demanding legislations in terms of food safety and food production in the world. But let me just also stress this: when we talk about sustainability of the food systems, definitely, this has to do with the way we think production, but also the way we think consumption. That's why I find so important that we also invest a lot on the relationship of the consumers with food. We need to eat less in a more reasonable way, in a more balanced way. And we also have to be careful with this kind of discourses, so to speak, because what we say as true for societies such as the European ones is definitely not true for other societies in African countries or in so many parts of the world. So when we say that we need to eat less, we have to be careful what is that we're saying actually. But we do have, for instance, to reduce drastically the amount of waste we waste a lot. We waste tons and tons of food every year in the European Union. Around 20 tons of on a yearly basis, food of vegetables and fresh fruit. This is huge, and I mean it's something that we have to rethink and makes part of the transition to more sustainable food systems. To answer your question.
Thank you, Isabel. Very clear. Kristin, Isabel mentioned there about not treating, for example, Africa in the same way as we need to adapt ourselves. It's not a one-size-fits-all policy, but when it comes to the oceans and development policy, Kristin, what do you think the relationship is there? What does development policy bring in terms of protecting and managing the oceans in a sustainable way?
Well, of course, we need the same principles. We have the sustainability, the environmental sustainability, and also building upon the ecosystems and what is already there. We cannot, well, the industries has to adapt and not the other way. So, and that principle is the same all around the world. Then, of course, it is applied in different ways, and also the size of the industry and what is needed and how we use the ocean is different from country to country. But I think there is a lot to learn from exchanging knowledge across countries and across continents. In Norway, we have already put a lot of efforts into the management of the seas and oceans, and I'm sure there are lots of experience that we can share with other countries without not necessarily copying it in detail. But the management of the oceans is not about the management of one industry. It's also about finding ways to live together. All the different kind of activities, and aquaculture in one, fisheries is one, fisheries is another, sometimes in conflict with each other, with tourism, with other kind of industries. It could be shipping and petroleum exploration.
That's the problem, isn't it? Because each of these industries demands growth and more consumption, and yet we're saying, actually, please don't do that.
Yeah, and it's a space, and the spatial planning is really, really important, and you have constraints getting the permission for aquaculture industry, but it could as well be other industries. So really, really to look into how system to find ways to where can you really develop the different types of industries, where do you have the opportunities looking together.
Let me ask Isabel on this also. Isabel, you mentioned about the difficulty with bureaucracy, and we hear this again and again in terms of we announce big packages of things that you can do, and then for SMEs in particular, trying to get access to those funds becomes a bureaucratic nightmare, and so the whole transition to a more sustainable economy in this instance becomes much more difficult. Do you think we're going to get better at this? Do you see any encouragement in terms of how aquaculture is being managed in these different transitory processes for tourism, for example, and not just fisheries, managing this in a better way, faster? Okay, I can't hear you. 1 second. And there we go. Try. I think you're on mute now, are you? Yes. I think. Can you unmute, please, Isabel? Maybe. Okay. There we go.
Oh, sorry. Well, it's okay because I didn't say much. I was saying that as I see it, I think we are going the right direction. I mean, obviously, we all recognize that an effort has to be made in order to decrease bureaucracy. And when I know it's not the same thing, but when we look, for instance, at these at the recent EMFAF. For instance, we see an effort, an evolution in terms of making it easier for fishers to deal with access to funding. So I think we are going in the right direction, but this also has to do with the way national authorities, national entities also are capable of answering to the requests for instance, for the creation of new productions in aquaculture. So it's all, let's say, intertwined. It's not just the European Union level, but also at the national and the regional level. There has to be a close articulation of all elements and identities involved to speed up these processes. But I think we are going in the right direction.
Thank you. I'm glad you went through EMFAF before I did. I was going to struggle with that. The European Maritime, Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, which has about €6 billion attached to it as well. Jens, you spoke earlier about, and as did Ricardo too, about the knowledge element of this as well, and that are we at the beginning of really understanding what's needed to be done here? Because in terms of political culture, the blue economy is not well understood from where I sit. People don't understand you give figures earlier about this, the invest $1, get $5 back, and also 6 times more capacity in terms of food production if it's managed properly as well. Do we need to educate the political class and consumers before these policies become more effective, Jens?
Well, that's partly why we have set up the Ocean Panel, and I think also part of the reason why Norway is trying to play a very active part in Brussels, and also with regard to EU member states to promote the blue economy. And there is a lot of traction now with the panel's report, but also the general trend for sustainability also is a benefit for the ocean, because what you get from food and energy, it requires better use of ocean resources. So I think the trend is our friend, basically, when it comes to ocean issues. But I think also there's the national story of some countries do not include the maritime sector, and I think that's also a part of the conscience that we need to build. Of course, Portugal is definitely a country with a very long maritime tradition, where the ocean is in everyone's head all the time. But there's a lot of other European countries where the maritime tradition is something that's maybe very present along the coast. I'm thinking perhaps Germany, which has a fairly small coastline, but still very much an ocean nation with a large merchant navy as well, and a proud maritime history. So reactivating those national stories about the ocean and the maritime sector, I think that would be a big possibility for all of us who are interested in promoting the blue economy.
Okay, you're winning on sound bites today. The trend is our friend. Thank you for that. Ricardo, just before we take a couple of questions, Portugal has led by example through this as well. And for you, in terms of practical outcomes from Portuguese transition and the integration of the Green Deal with the blue economy, what stands out for you? What are the highlights here? Yeah, I think you're on mute also. Let's see.
So yeah, mute.
Yeah,
thank you very much, Brian. Brian, you said something that is target now on this Starfish mission, is the emotional connection of the citizens with the sea. In fact, something that I clearly understood, I noted particularly when I came to politics and I went to the European Parliament, is that as a scientist, I has been talking among of the fun of the funds, the club of funds of the ocean and the sea, and I didn't notice that around we had to do a lot of motivation and clarification about the ocean. I think, let me tell that during this last, I know that I'm not tackling your question exactly, but this is an issue that you mentioned on the previous question that interests me in particular, and. In fact, Portugal has been, since the end of the 90s, very, very involved on the issues of the ocean and the sea. Of course, we are a coastal country. We have an important economic exclusive zone. We are planning the extension of the continental shelf, also huge, and we have a vocation for the ocean, for the discoveries, for the sea. And in fact, we began national strategies for the sea in the early 2000s. And these are important documents, are important leading political documents, for strategic documents. And some people do not understand how the economy of the sea became important in Portugal. And people eventually does not notice, for instance, that the most important product of export in Portugal in agro-food are food from the sea. Other transformed or even fresh fish, but most of it transformed by the industry. And that, in fact, if you look to, we have a satellite account of the sea, it is the third most important sector in Portugal. And so we give importance, but it is not noticed eventually by or taken as strongly as should be by the society. But at the time we were doing these strategies for the sea, in fact, I can notice that in the international agendas, the oceans and the sea had not the importance and the relevance that it should have. But during these last 5 years, the things have changed dramatically, and the sea is turning relevant in terms of policies. We have the SDG 14 for the first time in agendas of development. It's the first time in 2015, and if we notice the importance of the sea in terms of climate, it is. The forests were always coming first.
Yes.
And if you look at the IPCC only came with this report regarding the ocean in 2019. And but I think that it's become, the ocean and the sea is becoming strongly relevant in the international agenda. This is very important. And that's why this is so important, this high-level panel that we are building, because we need new forms of economy, for a change, for a world that is changing really, and we need to help on this change. And the sea cannot be looked as a sea of torment and trouble, but an element of security and transformation.
Thank you. Excellent, Ricardo. Isabel, question for you from Taisi, and Taisi from Brazil. Which are the parameters to define a sustainable fishery, I'm assuming a sustainable fisheries policy? Do we have enough scientific knowledge to affirm a sustainable fishery policy? Isabel.
Okay, I hope you hear me.
Yes.
First of all, data, you mentioned that data is really, really important. That's why I think it's very good news that we are actually defending the protection of significant areas of the sea, for instance, through the marine protected areas. So I know that sometimes there is, some less positive reactions, so to speak, especially next to the sectors, but the gains are very, very high, and they are not only environmental, they are also economic and social, and they also provide the protection of these areas, provide also this very important thing, which is to have data. We need to have more information, more data on how the activities, the fishing activities, tourism activities in the sea, how they actually impact on the species. It's the best way to have science on our side. It's the best way to protect the environment, to protect the species, obviously all the richness that we have in our seas, and also at the same time to protect the fishers. Sometimes, they really don't have a way to argue in their own defense and say, well, we are actually having not that negative impact. But they can't really do this kind of argument unless there are data that actually explain in a very clear and sustained way which the impacts are. And this is the best way to I see my picture is frozen.
Yeah, I'll come back to you in just a moment. Let's let it refresh a little bit as well. There's another question for San. Yeah, Okay, Mr. Santos and Mr. Holt. So Torius Kandal from WWF in Norway. He says, Mr. Santos, Mr. Holt, how do you see deep seabed mining as part of the future blue economy? A loaded question, but I'm sure you can manage that. Ricardo, you first. How do you see deep seabed mining as part of the blue economy?
I think many people think that we are already doing deep seabed mining, but there is no commercial deep seabed mining. And I think we have not the conditions yet to proceed with commercial seabed mining. We don't have the technology. We know that we have strong issues concerning environmental impacts of seabed mining. There will be no seabed mining without losses of biodiversity for sure, and it is something that should eventually be proceed. I believe that it will occur because there is a lot of pressure from the industry and sometimes with false arguments. I don't believe that we need now at this moment the minerals they take it, and we don't have enough knowledge of the impacts of it. There is important studies. The European Commission, I must applaud, has approved and financed very important projects like Midas or Hermione, but Midas, that made studies on the impacts of plumes, many of them on laboratory, of course, difficult to do in good conditions. And if deep sea mining will inhibit the true economy that exists, like fishing or tourism or whale watching, because the sound can have some trouble, and the distribution of the plumes with heavy metals can disturb important habitats, it is a problem. But if we cannot proceed without proper knowledge and good technology, I believe that one way it will be done, better later than sooner, and only with the good knowledge that is needed, the impacts that it can trouble.
So perfect the technology before we go wrecking stuff, I suppose.
Yes.
Jens, do you want to add to this first, and then maybe Hugo wants to comment on this also. Jens.
Yes, just very briefly. As you know, the Norwegian government is in the process of assessing potential seabed mining areas, and that's a process where we gather knowledge because we need to know more, obviously. But I think what we need to reflect upon here is the green transition will require a lot of minerals in order to achieve it, and also the EU has stated clearly that you want to have some kind of strategic autonomy on resources as well, and circular economy is an obvious answer, which the Ocean Panel is looking at. But the demand for minerals puts us in a big dilemma, which we hopefully can solve with more knowledge and technology. But there will be difficult debates in the years ahead related to seabed mining.
Excellent, thank you for that. That's a clear point. And Hugo, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think a lot has been said already, but I can only add that we are convinced that there are opportunities, but there are considerable challenges and risks in the taking up of commercial seabed mining. I'm afraid that we will have to confront the discussion rather sooner than later in the context of the International Seabed Authority, because to my understanding, the first requests for triggering the 2-year delay for sort of getting the permits to start exploration activities will reach or have reached the Seabed Authority already. So I think that will be a very difficult discussion, and to see how we can safeguard the integrity of many of those areas that are interesting for seabed mining, but at the same time maybe actually areas that are fragile and ecologically important. So it's a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristin, and then maybe Isabel want to add as well. The importance of the biodiversity strategy, Kristin, and its link with the sustainable blue economy, in particular the impact it has on fisheries. How do you see that relationship developing?
Oh yes, the biodiversity is, of course, it is the basis for the blue bioeconomy, and it really has to be protected. But there doesn't really need to be a conflict with the exploration and the exploitation of the bioresources if it's done in a sustainable way. But then we need good knowledge and really good data on the ecosystems and the impacts of exploitation on the ecosystems. But definitely we cannot have a bioeconomy without really also taking care of the biodiversity.
Isabel, welcome back.
Yes, thank you so much. I had to refresh the connection, and I was saying the importance of collecting data, because we really need the science on our side to define the best ways to protect the seas. And when I look at the biodiversity strategy, I think one important message is the relevance that it gives to the protection of the seas through the marine protected areas, for instance. We must, I think it's really important to say that we must work to ensure that these maritime areas, protected areas, are really implemented in line with the objectives of the strategy and as they were established. And for that, it is necessary to ensure that there are management plans in place and monitoring and control of the activities. It's not so much about sometimes forbidding activities, but a real control of this, and that the users of these areas understand the objectives and are fully aligned with them in their activities. To draw maritime protected areas on a map is not enough to say we are doing our best for biodiversity. It's not enough to protect biodiversity. We need real implementation and monitoring, and fishers and all the key the stakeholders involved in these activities are key to this goal. Right. Let me say just that they are the first to feel the consequences of the reduction of fish populations. So they should be the first to understand, and sometimes they are actually the first ones to understand when the fishing is above the biological limits. So they are really key to help us in this control and monitoring of what is happening in the oceans. We have a common fisheries policy that has addressed these issues on sustainability for many years, perhaps not in all the best way possible, but we have achieved some positive results, and we are beginning to see the visibility of those results, thanks also to the effort of fishers and everybody involved in the process.
Thank you. We're coming very close to our time, but I just want to get a quick word from Ricardo on governance here as well. A really quick word. And the role of the European Parliament, Ricardo, you're on both sides of the regulatory frame here. So what can the European Parliament do in terms of helping with the governance in terms of everything we talked about, the blue economy, and making sure that targets are reasonable and people adhere to them? Microphone.
The European Parliament, after, I believe, 2007 or 2009, after the Lisbon Agreement, became a co-legislator. So the European Parliament is really a very important institution in terms of all the legislation that deals with the European Union issues, and they are uncontainable. And my experience is that we can intervene in this process. If we go, for instance, for the issues of mining that you refer, there was a resolution in the European Parliament from 2017, I believe, that proposes a moratorium for some time in these issues of mining. And this was incorporated. It cannot be taken out. It was incorporated on the European biodiversity strategy, the actual, one of the pillars of the Green Deal.
Thank you. It's clear that kind of approach is exactly what's needed. So let's go to our final sound bites to wrap up. Jens, you want to kick off with your last word? Please, we're really close on time, so about 30 seconds each would be really appreciated. Jens, off you go.
Thanks. No, I must say that the discussion today has, I think, shown how much possibilities there are in the blue economy, and I can just warn you all that Norway will keep on highlighting the opportunities in the blue economy, and in particular show how it's relevant for EU-Norway cooperation. We are, of course, a member of the single market, but the ocean presents, much more possibilities than what lies in the single market, and the possibility for a deeper cooperation both in Europe and globally as well.
Hugo, blue and green, what's the way forward?
Well, I think for blue as for green, it is important to put one's own house in order to be a credible partner and for a global change that is necessary in that regard as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Isabel.
I'll just ask you to repeat because I was without sound.
Sure.
So I didn't.
Okay, just in terms of the blue and green, what's the way forward? Your soundbite.
Yeah, I think we have the good instruments to go in the right direction with the Green Deal and with the biodiversity strategy, the farm to fork strategy, although this one is not so much looking at sea production and consumption, but it has an holistic approach which I think is very important also in terms of defining consumption when it comes to the definition of the sustainability of food systems. So I think at this stage we have all the right instruments from a political point of view that can help us go in the right direction for more sustainable approaches to the seas and to really build up a strong and resilient blue economy. So I'm positive about the future on that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to rush you. Kristin, over to you. Quick word on blue-green.
Yes, thank you. I think that the blue is really a key for the green transition and solutions. And I absolutely think that we both need to use and also to protect the ocean. And I think, as I also said, that the communication and a dialogue between the various stakeholders and the groups, the governance and the civil society and the academia and also the industry is very key to really to progress towards the sustainability and also the greening of the economy.
Thank you, Kristin. Ricardo, 30 seconds, all yours, last word.
This was the theme of our presidency, the blue agenda in the Green Deal. And there will be no Green Deal without a strong blue agenda.
You nailed it, sir. Thank you very much for that. Excellent. Let's just thank all our panelists today, Ricardo, Jens, Hugo, Isabel and Kristin. There was a big discussion. I wish we could have done more detail on this as well. It's clear there's a broad scope and there's a lot of work to be done ahead, but data-driven and balanced approach to that as well. So also thank you to the mission of Norway to the European Union and also the Portuguese presidency for the support for the event today. And to my team here, Tamara, but also Team Norway, Kaya for all her assistance in the preparation, and to Malta and to Zoran. I'm Brian Maguire. I wish you a good afternoon.